The sky above New Haven burned with colors that should not exist in nature. Purple and green flames danced across the atmosphere as the orbital bombardment continued its merciless assault. Sarah Chen pressed her daughter closer to her chest and ran toward the emergency shelters, her feet pounding against the cracked pavement. Around her, the world she had known for 15 years was dying. New Haven had been a paradise. The colony stretched across fertile plains where earth crops grew twice as fast under the light of the system's gentle yellow sun. 2.3 million people called this world home. Farmers, teachers, engineers, children who had never seen Earth but heard stories of the blue planet from their grandparents. They had built schools and parks, libraries and theaters. They had no weapons, no military installations, nothing that could threaten anyone. The Concordate ships had appeared 3 days ago, massive vessels that blotted out the sun, carrying the combined flags of 47 alien species who claimed to govern this part of the galaxy. Their message had been simple and cold. This world sat in protected space. Humanity had no right to be here. Evacuate immediately. Colony Administrator Marcus Webb had tried to reason with them. He explained that the settlement had been here for 30 years, that the survey showed no prior claims to this system, that 2 million people could not simply pack up and leave in minutes. He begged for 30 days, time to arrange transport ships, to gather belongings, to say goodbye to the only home most colonists had ever known. The Concordate commander, being called Zekthar from the warrior species known as the Vorn, had given them 30 minutes instead. Sarah reached the shelter entrance and joined the flood of people trying to squeeze through doors designed for orderly evacuation, not panicked flight. Someone screamed behind her. She did not look back. She could not. Her daughter Emily was only 7 years old. Getting her to safety was all that mattered. The first plasma lance struck the northern agriculture sector. Sarah felt the heat wave even from 3 kilometers away. The blast vaporized everything within a 2-kilometer radius. Farms where she had walked just yesterday morning picking apples with Emily ceased to exist in a flash of superheated light. Inside the shelter, emergency lighting flickered on. Hundreds of people crowded into spaces meant for maybe 200. Children cried. Adults tried to comfort them while their own faces showed the terror they could not hide. The shelter doors, sealed with a heavy clang that sounded like a tomb closing. Marcus Webb's voice came over the emergency speakers. He was still in the command center on the surface, still trying to negotiate, still believing that civilized beings would not commit mass murder. His voice shook as he spoke. All shelters, this is Administrator Webb. The Concordate forces are continuing their attack. Stay in the shelters. The reinforced structures will protect you. Help is coming. Earth has been notified. Just stay calm and stay underground. Sarah held Emily tight and whispered lies about how everything would be okay. Around them, families huddled together. Old Joseph Martinez, who ran the corner grocery store, held his wife's hand. The Okonkwo family, all 6 of them, prayed quietly in Igbo. Dr. Patel, who had delivered half the children in the colony, tried to organize medical supplies with shaking hands. The bombardment continued for 6 hours. Each impact shook the shelter. Dust fell from the ceiling. The air grew hot and stale as the ventilation system struggled against the heat bleeding through meters of reinforced concrete. The lights failed, twice plunging them into darkness filled with screams before backup power kicked in. When the attacks finally stopped, the silence felt worse than the explosions. Marcus Webb's voice did not return to the speakers. Nobody from the surface answered their calls. The shelter's external sensors showed radiation levels that would kill an unprotected human in minutes. The temperature outside exceeded 200 degrees. The colony, their home, their world, was gone. They waited in the darkness. Hours became days. The shelter's supplies would last for weeks, maybe months, if they rationed carefully. But the radiation was not decreasing. The life support systems were failing one by one. They were not built for extended use, just long enough to survive a storm or a temporary emergency. On the 3rd day, little Emily asked her mother when they could go home. Sarah had no answer. She just held her daughter and cried silently. Some shelters had it worse. Shelter 7 took a direct hit on the second day of bombardment. The 3,000 people inside died instantly when the structure collapsed. Shelter 12's life support failed on day 4. By the time Shelter 3 managed to dig a tunnel to reach them, everyone had suffocated. In Shelter 1, where Sarah and Emily waited, people began to understand that rescue might not come in time. They were buried under the ruins of their civilization with failing air and rising radiation. This was not survival. This was a slow death. Thomas Anderson, a former Earth military engineer, examined the shelter's systems with increasing despair. The radiation shielding was compromised in 3 sections. The water recyclers were contaminated. The air scrubbers were working at 60% capacity and dropping. He gave them 2 weeks, maybe 3, if people stayed very still and breathed very slowly. On day 7, young David Kim asked his father why the aliens had done this. His father, who taught philosophy at the Colony University, struggled to find an answer. How do you explain genocide to a child? How do you tell your son that some beings in the universe see other lives as worthless simply because they are different, because they are inconvenient, because they can? The children stopped playing. The adults stopped pretending things would be fine. They sat in the dim light and waited. On day 9, the sensors detected something: ships entering orbit. For a moment, hope surged. Then terror replaced it. Had the Concordate returned to finish what they started? Would they hunt down even the survivors in the shelters? The communication system crackled to life. A human voice speaking English with an Earth accent filled the shelter. New Haven survivors, this is the scout ship Pathfinder. We are beginning rescue operations. Transmit your locations. We are getting you out. Sarah clutched Emily and sobbed. Around them, people who had given up on living suddenly remembered how to hope. The rescue took 4 days. The Pathfinder's crew, only 30 people on a ship designed for exploration, worked without sleep. They used cutting torches to burn through rubble. They rigged radiation suits and made trip after trip to the surface. They found Shelter 1 on day 10. They found Shelter 3 on day 11, Shelter 5 on day 12. Captain Maria Santos of the Pathfinder walked through the ruins with her crew and recorded everything. The melted remains of homes, the crater where the school had stood, the twisted metal that had been the hospital. She documented the bodies they found, careful to record every face, every name when they could identify them. Of the 2.3 million people who called New Haven home, they found 47,000 alive, 47,000 out of millions. The rest were dead, vaporized in the initial bombardment or slowly killed by radiation and starvation in shelters the rescue teams reached too late. Sarah and Emily were among the survivors. They boarded the Pathfinder, wrapped in thermal blankets, their bodies weak from days of minimal rations and contaminated air. Sarah watched through the viewport as they lifted away from New Haven. The world below was a blackened scar. Nothing moved. Nothing lived. The paradise they had built was a tomb. Captain Santos gathered the survivors in the cargo bay. She looked at their faces, at the children who had lost parents, at the parents who had lost children, at the hollow eyes of people who had watched their entire world burn. She told them what happened next. They were going to Earth. They would receive medical care, counseling, support, and Earth would know what happened here. Among the survivors was Marcus Webb. He had stayed at the command center, still broadcasting, still pleading with the Concordate, even as the building collapsed around him. They found him 3 days later, trapped in a basement with 12 others. His leg was crushed, his body burned, but he had kept a recording device running. Every communication with the Concordate was saved. Every refusal of mercy, every casual dismissal of human life, every war crime was documented in his final transmission. The Pathfinder jumped to faster than light speed, carrying its precious cargo of broken survivors and damning evidence. The journey to Earth would take 2 weeks. Captain Santos sent the recordings ahead at maximum priority. She had served in the Earth Space Navy before becoming an explorer. She recognized what she was carrying. This was not just a rescue mission. This was the spark that would light a fire across all of human space. The message reached Earth on a Tuesday morning. It reached the Mars colonies by Tuesday evening. By Wednesday, every human world, every station, every ship had seen the recordings. They watched Marcus Webb pleading for time to evacuate civilians. They heard Zekthar's cold refusal. They saw the bombardment begin. They counted the dead. The United Earth government convened an emergency session. Representatives from every nation, every corporation, every faction gathered in the assembly hall in Geneva. These were people who argued about everything, who could barely agree on what to have for lunch, who had spent 2 centuries bickering over resources and borders and pride. They took one vote. It was unanimous. Every shipyard in human space received the same order. Every factory, every forge, every construction facility was repurposed for a single goal. Humanity was going to war, not for conquest, not for territory, but to send a message that would echo across the galaxy. You do not burn our worlds. You do not murder our children. You do not get away with genocide. Admiral Kenji Tanaka, a quiet man who had spent 40 years building exploration ships, was called out of retirement. He accepted command of a fleet that did not yet exist, but soon would. His first order was simple. He wanted to meet the survivors. All of them. Sarah Chen stood before the Admiral with Emily at her side. He looked at her daughter, at the burns still healing on her arms, at the fear still living in her eyes. He knelt down to Emily's level and spoke softly. I am sorry for what happened to you. I am sorry we were not there to protect you, but I promise you this. The people who did this will answer for it, and no child, human or alien, will ever have to go through what you went through, not while we still draw breath. Emily looked at this old man with sad eyes and asked a simple question. Are you going to kill them all like they killed us? Admiral Tanaka shook his head. No, child. We are going to show them that being strong does not mean being cruel. We are going to teach them that justice is not the same as revenge. But mostly, we are going to make absolutely certain they never do this again. Sarah watched the Admiral stand and walk away. She did not know if she believed him. She did not know if justice was possible, or if the whole galaxy would simply burn. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Humanity was done asking politely. Humanity was done hoping other species would treat them with basic decency. The galaxy had mistaken their peaceful expansion for weakness. They were about to learn the difference between choosing peace and being unable to wage war. New Haven was dead. 2.3 million people were gone. But 47,000 survivors remained to tell the story. And behind them, gathering in the darkness of space, a sleeping giant was waking up. The galaxy was about to receive humanity's reply. The forge world of Mars had been quiet for decades. Tourists visited its museums, corporations mined its resources, and terraform engineers slowly worked to thicken its atmosphere. What nobody talked about, what even most government officials did not know, was what lay beneath the red sand. Dr. Helen Park stood in the command center 3 kilometers underground and watched as her life's work activated. Rows of automated factories stretched to the horizon in every direction, through the tunnels her teams had carved over 30 years. Each factory was designed with one purpose: build warships faster than any enemy could count. She had proposed the project 40 years ago, fresh out of university with a doctorate in industrial engineering and a terrible vision of humanity's future. Her presentation to the United Earth government had been simple and terrifying. Humans were alone in a galaxy full of unknown species. Some would be friendly, some would not. And if humanity ever faced an existential threat, they would need the ability to respond with overwhelming force. The politicians had laughed at first. Build entire planets into weapons factories? Maintain them in secret for decades? The cost would be astronomical. The paranoia unnecessary. Humanity was making friends among the stars, not enemies. Then the Outer Rim incident happened. A human research station vanished. All 30 scientists gone without explanation. The investigation found evidence of weapons fire, of ships jumping away, of a massacre covered up. The aliens responsible were never identified. They disappeared into the vast darkness of space. Suddenly, Dr. Park's proposal did not seem paranoid anymore. It seemed prescient. The project began with Mars. Automated mining systems dug deep into the planet's crust, extracting metals and rare elements. Construction drones built factories that built more factories, self-replicating industrial systems that required minimal human oversight. The goal was simple. If humanity ever needed a fleet, they could have one. Fast. Mars was just the beginning. Titan followed, its methane seas converted to fuel production facilities. Europa's ice became water for life support and hydrogen for fusion reactors. Ganymede's core was hollowed out and filled with weapons manufacturing plants. 3 hidden systems beyond the Kuiper Belt, systems humanity had quietly claimed but never advertised, were converted into shipyards. 6 planets, 12 moons, all connected by a network of automated supply chains and quantum-linked command systems. The Forge world slept, waiting for the day they would be needed. That day arrived when news of New Haven reached Earth. Dr. Park received the activation codes from the United Earth government at 0300 hours. Her hands shook as she entered them. Around her, engineers who had spent their entire careers maintaining systems that were never supposed to be used scrambled to their stations. The command was clear. Maximum production, no limits. Build the fleet. The Forges woke up hungry. On Mars, fusion reactors that had run at minimal power for decades surged to full capacity. Mining drones that extracted a few tons of ore per day shifted to thousands of tons per hour. Factory floors designed to produce 1 ship per month reconfigured themselves for continuous production. The entire planet began to hum with industrial fury. The design they built was called the Retribution-class Dreadnought. 3 kilometers of armor, weapons, and engines. There was no luxury, no comfort, no space wasted on anything that did not contribute to its singular purpose. These ships existed to fight and to win. The hull was a sandwich of titanium carbide composite and reactive armor that could absorb direct hits from plasma weapons. The engines used quantum-entangled particles to generate thrust, a technology humanity had reverse-engineered from ancient alien ruins found on a dead world 20 years ago. Nobody knew who built the original technology. They had been extinct for millions of years, but their science worked, and humanity had learned from it. The weapons were brutal in their simplicity. Railguns lined the spine of each ship, capable of accelerating tungsten rods to a significant fraction of light speed. Each projectile carried enough kinetic energy to shatter a small moon. Plasma lances, powered by the same fusion reactors that drove the engines, could burn through any known armor. And antimatter torpedoes, the most expensive and devastating weapons in the human arsenal, were loaded into launch tubes at the rate of 100 per ship. Building 1 Retribution-class Dreadnought took 3 months with traditional shipyard methods. The Forge worlds built them in 8 hours. The secret was automation and scale. Every component was manufactured simultaneously across hundreds of factories. Hull sections were printed using molecular assemblers that built matter atom by atom. Engines were constructed in zero-gravity facilities and transported through underground maglev tunnels. Weapon systems were tested, calibrated, and installed by robots that never slept, never made mistakes, and worked at speeds no human could match. The first ship rolled out of the Mars Forge on day 3 after activation. Engineers watched in awe as the massive vessel lifted from the underground construction bay and rose through the carefully concealed launch shaft. On the surface, tourists taking pictures of the sunset never noticed the brief shimmer in the air as the ship's stealth systems activated and it vanished into orbit. By the end of week 1, 500 ships were in orbit. By the end of month 1, 50,000 Retribution-class dreadnoughts were operational. The fleet grew at an exponential rate as more Forge worlds came online, and production lines optimized themselves. Admiral Tanaka visited Mars on day 30. He walked through the factories with Dr. Park, watching robots assemble weapons of war with mechanical precision. A new ship emerged from the construction bay every 15 minutes. The scale was beyond anything he had seen in 40 years of military service. "Can you really build 500,000? He asked Dr. Park. She nodded. "We can build 1,000,000 if you need them. The only limit is raw materials, and we have asteroid mining drones bringing in enough metal to build 10,000 ships per day. The system is self-sustaining now. It will run until we tell it to stop or until we run out of things to build from." Admiral Tanaka watched another dreadnought rise from the depths of Mars. Each ship represented enough firepower to conquer a small solar system. 500,000 of them would be the largest fleet ever assembled in human history. Possibly the largest fleet in galactic history. The Concordat has no idea what is coming, Dr. Park said quietly. Their intelligence services are good, but they cannot penetrate our security. By the time they realize what we have built, it will be too late. The Admiral nodded slowly. That is the point. We do not want a fair fight. We want them to know, absolutely and without question, that they made a mistake. That attacking humanity was the worst decision they ever made. Recruitment centers across human space were flooded with volunteers. Every person who saw the footage from New Haven wanted to serve. They wanted to be part of humanity's reply. Veterans came out of retirement. Young people barely old enough to enlist signed up by the millions. Former rivals and enemies put aside their differences to stand together. The training was intense but brief. The ships were so advanced, so automated, that they practically flew themselves. Human crews were needed for decision-making, for strategy, for the things computers could not do. But gone were the days of massive crews maintaining every system manually. A Retribution-class dreadnought needed only 300 personnel. With 50,000 ships operational in the first month, 15 million humans were serving in the fleet. More arrived every day. Commander Sarah Chen, survivor of New Haven, walked into a recruitment office on Earth 6 weeks after her rescue. Her daughter Emily was in a care facility, recovering physically but still waking up screaming from nightmares. Sarah could not bring her child back. She could not undo what happened, but she could make absolutely certain it never happened again. The recruiter looked at her medical files and frowned. "Ma'am, you have severe PTSD. You are still recovering from radiation exposure. You have a young child who needs you. Are you certain you want to serve?" Sarah met his eyes with a gaze that had watched her world burn. "My daughter needs a galaxy where colonies do not get wiped out by aliens who think we are insignificant. I am going on that fleet. Put me wherever you need me." They made her a communications officer on the dreadnought. Remember them. The ship's name was not subtle. None of them were. Justice for New Haven, never again. 2 million voices. The fleet did not hide its purpose. By month 3, 150,000 dreadnoughts filled the orbital space around Earth, Mars, and the outer Forge worlds. The site was visible from the surface of Earth. At night, people looked up and saw not stars but the running lights of warships. The sky glittered with humanity's wrath. The Concordat finally noticed. Their intelligence services had dismissed early reports. Humanity building hundreds of thousands of warships? Impossible. No species had that industrial capacity. It had to be propaganda, psychological warfare, an attempt to scare the Concordat into concessions. Then their spy satellites captured images of the Forge worlds. The analysts stared at the data in disbelief. Mars was not just building ships. It was producing them at a rate that violated every known principle of economics and logistics. 1 ship every 15 minutes from a single planet. The numbers made no sense. They sent covert operatives to human space. 3 ships disguised as merchant vessels entered the Sol system to observe. They never reported back. Humanity's defense network was far more sophisticated than the Concordat realized. The spy ships were detected, tracked, and quietly disabled. Their crews were captured and held in comfortable detention, while their governments received a simple message. "We know you are watching. Watch carefully. See what happens when you murder our children." The Concordat Council convened an emergency session. 47 species ranging from the aquatic Kryn to the insectoid Zifiri to the mammalian Torvin gathered in their grand chamber on Concordat Prime. They watched the surveillance footage. They reviewed the intelligence reports. They did the math. The numbers were terrifying. By the most conservative estimates, humanity would have 500,000 warships operational within 10 months. 500,000. The entire Concordat military consisted of 80,000 ships, accumulated over centuries, maintained by dozens of species. And humanity was going to outnumber them 6-1 with brand new state-of-the-art vessels. Ambassador Telmore of the Kryn species, one of the founding members of the Concordat, addressed the council with his translation device rendering his aquatic sounds into galactic standard. "We must negotiate, offer reparations, return the survivors to their territory, apologize, do whatever it takes to stop this fleet from launching." Warmaster Zekthar of the Vorn, the species that had carried out the bombardment, rose to his full 3-meter height. His 4 arms crossed over his chest in a gesture of contempt. "We negotiate with equals. These humans are primitives playing with weapons they do not understand. Their fleet will break against our defenses. We have faced worse. Ambassador Telmore's skin flushed with distress colors. Worse, War Master. They are building more ships in a month than we have built in a century. This is not a primitive species. This is an industrial power we have never encountered before. The council argued for 3 days. Some wanted peace. Some wanted war. Some wanted to blame everything on the Vorn and sacrifice Zekthar to human justice in hopes of mercy. Humanity sent no diplomats, no peace offers, no threats, just a simple countdown broadcast on all frequencies. Fleet deployment in 6 months. New Haven will be answered. By month 6, 300,000 dreadnoughts were operational. By month 10, the 500,000th ship, named Final Warning, was commissioned in a ceremony attended by every survivor of New Haven. Emily Chen, age 7, smashed a bottle of synthesized champagne against the hull in a tradition borrowed from ancient Earth navies. The fleet assembled in the Oort cloud, far from Earth, far from prying eyes. 500,000 warships arranged in perfect formations that stretched across light years of space. Supply ships, medical vessels, and transport craft joined them. Over 150 million humans crewed the armada. Every single one was a volunteer. Admiral Tanaka stood on the bridge of his flagship, remember them, and looked at the tactical display. Each dot represented a dreadnought. There were so many dots that the display had to zoom out to show them all. He had commanded exploration vessels, research ships, patrol craft. Never anything like this. Nobody in human history had commanded anything like this. Commander Chen entered the bridge and saluted. "Admiral, all ships report ready. We are waiting for your order." Tanaka looked at her. This woman who had lost everything and chose to serve rather than break. He looked at his crew, at the faces of people who believed in justice, who trusted humanity to do the right thing even with overwhelming power. "Send the message," he said quietly. "Let the galaxy know we are coming." The broadcast went out on every frequency, in every language spoken by the concordate species. The message was simple, without threats, without anger. Just a statement of fact. New Haven, 2.3 million dead. You will answer. The fleet began to move. 500,000 ships engaging their faster-than-light drives in a synchronized sequence that lit up the dark between stars. They did not sneak. They did not hide. They announced their passage through every system they crossed. The long march had begun, and at its end, the Concordat would learn what it meant to provoke humanity. The jump flash was visible across 3 star systems. 500,000 ships exiting faster-than-light travel simultaneously created a burst of radiation that lit up sensor arrays for hundreds of light years. It was not subtle. It was not meant to be. Admiral Kenji Tanaka stood on the bridge of Remember Them and watched the tactical display update. All ships accounted for. 0 losses. The massive transit had worked perfectly. They were now 3,000 light-years from Earth and 12,000 light-years from Concordat Prime. 39 more jumps to go. The fleet moved through space like a migration of metal whales. Each jump took them 400 light-years closer to their destination. Each jump was coordinated to the microsecond, allowing the entire armada to stay together. Human engineers had spent months perfecting the mass transit corridors, pathways through space-time where hundreds of thousands of ships could travel safely without colliding or scattering across the galaxy. After each jump, the fleet paused for 6 hours. Ships recharged their faster-than-light drives. Crews rested. Engineers performed maintenance, and the Admiralty reviewed intelligence reports from the systems they passed. The first system they jumped through was called Viridian, home to the Loth species. The Loth were not part of the Concordat, just a peaceful species that traded with everyone and bothered no one. When the human fleet appeared in their system, every Loth ship immediately fled to the far side of their star. Admiral Tanaka sent them a message. "People of Viridian, we mean you no harm. We are passing through your territory on our way to Concordat space. We will be gone in 6 hours. Please accept our apologies for the intrusion." The Loth planetary government responded with confusion and terror. They had never seen a military fleet this large. Nobody had. The largest battle in their recorded history involved maybe 200 ships. The humans had brought 500,000. When the human fleet jumped away exactly 6 hours later, having touched nothing and harmed no one, the Loth sent the recordings to every species they knew. The message spread across the galaxy. Humanity was on the move, and they were showing restraint even in their fury. The second system they passed through was Kalin 4, a minor Concordat military outpost. 300 Concordat ships were stationed there to monitor the border and intercept smugglers. When the human fleet arrived, the Concordat commander did not even try to fight. He evacuated the outpost and jumped away, broadcasting a frantic warning back to Concordat Prime. Admiral Tanaka let them go. The fleet's mission was not to hunt down random patrols. It was to reach the Concordat capital and force a reckoning. By the fifth jump, the psychological impact was spreading across the galaxy faster than the fleet itself. Every species with any connection to galactic affairs was watching. Some with fear, some with fascination, some with secret satisfaction that the Concordat was finally facing consequences for their arrogance. The independent traders and merchant guilds saw opportunity. They began broadcasting offers to humanity. Food supplies, fuel, anything the fleet might need, all at competitive prices. Admiral Tanaka authorized limited purchases, paying in human currency and establishing trade relationships that would matter after the war ended. The Concordat tried to spin the situation. Their propaganda networks broadcast messages claiming the human fleet was a bluff, holographic projections, or a desperate attempt to avoid the consequences of settling restricted space. Nobody believed them. Too many independent observers had seen the fleet. Too many sensors had recorded the jump flashes. The evidence was overwhelming. Commander Sarah Chen worked the communication station aboard Remember Them, coordinating transmissions between ships and monitoring the galactic communications network. She watched the Concordat propaganda with cold amusement. They were still trying to save face, still pretending humanity was the aggressor. She remembered the recording her colony administrator Marcus Webb had made. The Concordat commander Zekthar refusing to allow civilian evacuation, the casual dismissal of human life, the bombardment that followed. She had listened to that recording 100 times, each time feeling the anger burn a little hotter. The fleet continued its march. Jump by jump, system by system, they moved toward Concordat space. Each appearance was announced on all frequencies with the same simple message. New Haven, 2.3 million dead. You will answer. By the 10th jump, independent species began sending messages of support. The Varesh, a species that had lost a colony to Concordat enforcement actions 20 years ago, transmitted their gratitude that someone was finally standing up to the Concordat's brutality. The Halim, who had been forced to accept unfair trade terms under threat of military action, offered to provide star charts and intelligence. Admiral Tanaka accepted the intelligence and filed it carefully. He did not want allies driven by revenge or opportunism, but he would not refuse information that could save human lives. The Concordat military scrambled to respond. They pulled ships from patrol routes, from border stations, from defensive positions across their territory. The mobilization was chaotic and panicked. They had not fought a major war in 2 centuries. Their military was designed for police actions, for intimidating minor species, not for facing an existential threat. By the 20th jump, the fleet was halfway to Concordat Prime. The psychological warfare was working exactly as planned. Every jump created more panic, more pressure, more cracks in the Concordat's unity. The Zifiri, an insectoid species known for their logical approach to survival, withdrew from the Concordat military alliance. Their Queen Mind issued a statement that was cold and practical. The humans have shown overwhelming force and remarkable restraint. They announce their movements, they harm no civilians, they pay for supplies. This is not the behavior of conquerors. This is the behavior of a species seeking justice. We will not die for the Vorn's war crimes. The Zifiri withdrawal removed 15,000 ships from the Concordat defense fleet. More importantly, it showed other species that abandoning the Concordat was an option. The Kryn tried diplomacy. Ambassador Telmore, who had argued for peace from the beginning, sent a message directly to Admiral Tanaka. It was eloquent and desperate. He explained that the attack on New Haven was ordered by Vorn military commanders without proper authorization. He offered to arrest Zekthar and the other officers responsible. He offered reparations, territory, anything humanity wanted. Admiral Tanaka's response was brief. Ambassador, we appreciate your position. We understand that not all Concordat species supported the attack on New Haven. However, the attack was carried out under the Concordat flag, using Concordat authority, in the name of Concordat law. The organization is responsible. We will arrive at Concordat Prime in 60 days. You have until then to prepare your surrender terms. We will not negotiate before we arrive, and we will not negotiate after if you choose to fight. Tillmore tried to press further, but Tanaka cut the connection. This was not the time for half measures or political maneuvering. The fleet had one purpose and nothing would distract from it. The Vorn response was predictable. War Master Zekthar, now promoted to Supreme Military Commander of Concordat Forces, issued a declaration of defiance. He called humanity soft and weak for announcing their movements instead of striking like true warriors. He promised that the Concordat Defense Fleet would send the humans running back to Earth in defeat. Zekthar began concentrating forces at Concordat Prime. He pulled ships from every corner of Concordat space, abandoning border stations and leaving minor systems undefended. Everything was being staked on a single decisive battle. By the 30th jump, the human fleet crossed into official Concordat territory. They were 5 jumps away from Concordat Prime. The tension across the galaxy was suffocating. Every species watched and waited to see if this would end in negotiation or annihilation. Admiral Tanaka called a meeting of all ship captains via holographic conference. 500,000 officers appeared in the virtual space, their faces showing determination and focus. These were the people who would carry out humanity's reply. He needed them to understand what that reply would be. Captains, Tanaka began, his voice calm and measured. We are 5 days from Concordat Prime. When we arrive, we will face their full military might. They outnumber us in terms of nothing, actually. We outnumber them 6-1. We have better technology. We have better coordination. We will win the battle. He paused and looked across the sea of faces. But winning the battle is not our goal. Our goal is justice. Our goal is to ensure that what happened to New Haven never happens to anyone, human or alien, ever again. That means we fight with precision. We minimize civilian casualties. We disable rather than destroy whenever possible. We show the galaxy that having overwhelming power does not mean we use it carelessly. A captain from one of the outer ships spoke up. Admiral, with respect, they killed 2 million civilians. Why should we show them mercy? Tanaka nodded slowly. Because, Captain, we are not them. They killed civilians because it was convenient. Because they did not value human life. We will show them that we value all life, even theirs. We will show them that justice is not the same as revenge. And when this is over, when the galaxy looks at what happened, they will see a species that could have committed genocide and chose not to. That is the reputation we are building. That is why they will fear us and respect us. The captains absorbed this. Some agreed immediately. Others struggled with it. All of them understood the weight of what they were being asked to do. Destroy an enemy military while showing restraint. Win decisively while maintaining moral authority. It was not easy, but it was necessary. The fleet made its final jumps. System after system, drawing closer to Concordat Prime. The Concordat Defense Fleet was now fully assembled, 50,000 ships in defensive formation around their capital world. They had pulled in everything, abandoned every other position, bet everything on this battle. It was not enough. It was never going to be enough. The human fleet emerged from its final jump at the edge of the Concordat Prime system. 500,000 dreadnoughts arranged in perfect battle formation. The tactical displays showed both fleets clearly. The disparity was stunning. Admiral Tanaka opened a channel to the Concordat Defense Fleet. This is Admiral Kenji Tanaka of the United Earth Forces. We have arrived to seek justice for New Haven and the 2.3 million civilians murdered under your authority. You have 1 hour to surrender. Transmit the locations of all military installations in this system. Prepare to turn over all personnel involved in the attack on New Haven. If you choose to fight, we will disable your fleet and take what we came for by force. You will not win this battle. Do not die for leaders who committed war crimes. War Master Zekthar's response was filled with rage. You speak of justice? You invade our space with weapons of war and call it justice? We will teach you the price of arrogance, humans. We will send you back to your little blue world, broken and defeated. This is Concordat space. You have no authority here. Admiral Tanaka sighed. He had hoped, despite everything, that they would see reason. That someone in the Concordat leadership would look at the odds and choose survival over pride. Very well, Tanaka said quietly. All ships, battle stations. Remember your orders. Disable, do not destroy. Protect civilians. Show them what humanity can do. The countdown began, 60 minutes to the largest space battle in galactic history. Across the human fleet, weapons powered up, shields activated, and crews prepared for combat. They had trained for this. Built for this. Crossed the galaxy for this. Sarah Chen sat at her communication station and thought about Emily, safe on Earth, hopefully asleep and dreaming of better things. She thought about New Haven, the parks where she used to walk, the school where Emily had learned to read. All of it gone. She keyed her microphone. All ships, this is remember them, for New Haven for the 2 million. Make them answer. 500,000 ships echoed the call. For New Haven. The hour ended. War Master Zekthar gave the order to attack. The Concordat defense fleet surged forward, weapons blazing, committed to a battle they had already lost. And the human fleet, patient and precise and utterly overwhelming, went to work. The first Concordat plasma volley crossed the void between the fleets. A wave of superheated energy meant to cripple the human vanguard. The shots struck the shields of the leading dreadnoughts and dissipated harmlessly. Human shield technology, refined from those ancient alien ruins, operated on principles the Concordat had never encountered. Admiral Tanaka watched the tactical display with the calm of a man who had already won. The Concordat fleet was arranged in traditional battle formation, a defensive sphere around Concordat Prime with overlapping fields of fire. It was a textbook. Deployment exactly what any military academy would teach. It was also predictable. All ships execute pattern Omega-7, Tanaka ordered. The human fleet split into 7 massive formations, each containing over 70,000 ships. They moved with precision that should have been impossible for such a large force. Quantum-linked command systems allowed every ship to coordinate perfectly, responding to tactical changes in microseconds. The first formation engaged the Concordat vanguard head-on, drawing their fire and attention. The second and third formations swept around the flanks at high speed, faster than the Concordat ships could reposition. The fourth through seventh formations arranged themselves in a perfect sphere around the entire battle space, cutting off any chance of retreat. War Master Zekthar watched from his flagship Warrior's Pride as the human fleet executed its maneuver. He had fought in dozens of battles, commanded tens of thousands of warriors. He had never seen anything move like this. The coordination was unnatural, as if the entire human fleet shared a single mind. All ships concentrate fire on the leading human formation, Zekthar ordered. Break through and strike at their command ship. 10,000 Concordat ships focused their weapons on the human vanguard. Plasma lances, missile barrages, and kinetic rounds filled the space between fleets. It should have been devastating. The human ships barely slowed down. Their shields absorbed most of the damage. Their point defense systems, using the same railgun technology that powered their main weapons, shredded incoming missiles. A few ships took damage, their shields flickering under sustained fire, but they simply rotated back into the formation while fresh ships took their place. Then the humans returned fire. The railgun volleys were synchronized across thousands of ships. Tungsten rods accelerated to incredible velocities, each one carrying kinetic energy measured in megatons. They did not strike randomly. Each shot was calculated, targeted at specific systems on specific ships, engines, weapons, shield generators. The Concordat vanguard began to break apart, not exploding in dramatic fireballs but systematically disabled. Ships lost power and drifted. Weapons went offline. Crews abandoned vessels that were suddenly dead in space. Disable, not destroy, Admiral Tanaka reminded his fleet. These are soldiers following orders. We are not here for revenge. Commander Sarah Chen monitored the casualty reports from her communications station. The Concordat was losing ships by the hundreds, but the crew survival rate was over 90%. Human targeting was surgical, destroying capability while preserving lives. The battle continued for 4 hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. The Concordat fleet fought bravely, fought desperately, but they were simply overmatched. Human technology was better. Human numbers were overwhelming. Human coordination was flawless. By the third hour, 20,000 Concordat ships were disabled and drifting. The remaining 30,000 were scattered, their formation broken, their command structure in chaos. War Master Zekthar continued to order attacks. but fewer ships responded to each command. Admiral Tanaka opened a channel to the Concordate fleet. Warmaster Zekthar, you have lost this battle. Your ships are disabled. Your defenses are broken. You can continue fighting and watch your warriors die, or you can surrender and save lives. There is no shame in recognizing when you are beaten. Zekthar's response was filled with rage and pain. We are Vorn. We do not surrender. We die with honor. Then you will die, Tanaka said quietly. And your warriors will die, and it will accomplish nothing. Is that the honor you want? To waste lives in a battle already lost? For a moment Zekthar did not respond. On his bridge, his officers looked to him for guidance. Young warriors who had believed in Vorn supremacy, who had followed their warmaster into battle, now faced death for pride. One of Zekthar's junior officers, a female Vorn named Kethra, spoke carefully. Warmaster, the humans speak truth. We cannot win. If we continue, we lose everything. If we surrender, we live to rebuild. Zekthar turned on her with fury. You speak of surrender? You dishonor your ancestors. Kethra met his eyes without flinching. I speak of survival, Warmaster. Our ancestors valued wisdom as much as courage. There is no wisdom in dying for a battle already lost. Across the Concordate fleet, similar conversations were happening. Captains looking at their disabled ships, their wounded crews, the overwhelming force arrayed against them, the choice between pride and survival. One by one, Concordate ships began broadcasting surrender signals. First a few, then dozens, then hundreds. The tide turned not from human weapons, but from simple mathematics. The Concordate forces had lost, and continuing to fight would only increase the body count. Warmaster Zekthar watched his fleet abandon the battle. His bridge was silent except for the alerts warning of failing systems. His ship was crippled, its weapons offline, its shields depleted. He had led the Concordate forces to complete defeat. Finally, he transmitted his own surrender. The words felt like poison in his mouth, but he said them. This is Warmaster Zekthar to all Concordate forces. Cease fire. The battle is over. The shooting stopped. Space fell silent except for the hum of engines and the crackle of emergency transmissions. 50,000 Concordate ships, most disabled, all defeated. 500,000 human ships, barely scratched, surrounding them completely. The final count showed 3,000 Concordate ships destroyed, not by human choice but by accidents. Collisions and a few captains who chose to self-destruct rather than surrender. 47,000 ships were disabled and adrift. The crew casualties were remarkably low. The Concordate had lost the battle, but kept most of their people alive. The human fleet had 0 ships destroyed. 43 ships needed repairs. Total human casualties, 18 dead, 200 wounded. It was not a battle. It was a demonstration. Admiral Tanaka established a perimeter around Concordate Prime and began the siege. Human ships took up positions at every orbital approach, every jump point, every possible escape route. Nothing would leave this system without human approval. The terms were broadcast to the Concordate government. Surrender all personnel involved in the New Haven attack. Provide full access to military installations. Disarm the planetary defense systems. Accept occupation until the terms of justice were satisfied. The Concordate Council met in emergency session. The chamber that had once held 47 proud species now held terrified politicians watching their civilization crumble. Ambassador Telmore of the Kryn argued for immediate surrender. The Torvan representative wanted to evacuate the government and continue resistance from other worlds. The Vorn delegates demanded a fight to the last warrior. The debate raged for 2 days while the human fleet waited in perfect formation, patient and implacable. On the 3rd day, Admiral Tanaka did something unexpected. He requested permission to land on Concordate Prime with a small diplomatic shuttle. No weapons, no marines, just himself and a translator. He wanted to address the Concordate Council in person. The Council, stunned by this move, granted permission. What choice did they have? The human fleet could glass the planet from orbit if they wanted. A single admiral in their council chamber was hardly a threat. Kenji Tanaka walked into the Concordate Council chamber wearing his dress uniform, unarmed except for a ceremonial sidearm that had never been fired. He stood before the assembled representatives of 47 species and spoke in a voice that carried calm authority. Members of the Concordat Council, I am Admiral Kenji Tanaka of the United Earth Forces. I have traveled 15,000 light-years to stand before you, not to conquer you, not to destroy you, but to ensure you understand what you did and what will happen now. He activated a holographic display, showing the recordings from New Haven. The council members had seen them before, but watching again with the Admiral standing before them made it real in a way it had not been. 2.3 million civilians, Tanaka continued. Farmers, teachers, children. They had no weapons. They posed no threat. Your forces gave them 30 minutes to evacuate a world they had lived on for 3 decades. When they could not comply with this impossible demand, you burned their world. Some council members looked away. Others watched with obvious discomfort. A few, including the Vorn delegates, remained defiant. You made assumptions about humanity, Tanaka said. You assumed we were weak because we preferred peace. You assumed we were primitive because we avoided conflict. You assumed you could kill our people without consequence. You were wrong on all counts. He gestured to the window where the human fleet was visible as thousands of points of light surrounding the planet. I brought 500,000 warships to your capital. I could destroy every military installation in Concordat space. I could glass every Vorn world. I could make you feel the same pain you inflicted on New Haven. The chamber was silent. Every delegate understood that these were not empty threats. They had seen what the human fleet could do. But I will not, Tanaka continued, because that would make us like you. It would make us the kind of species that solves problems with mass murder, and we are not that species. We are better than that. He paused and looked directly at the Vorn delegation. Here are my terms. You will surrender all personnel involved in ordering, planning, or executing the attack on New Haven. They will stand trial under galactic law for war crimes. You will disarm your military to defensive levels only. You will accept human occupation of your military installations until we are satisfied you understand the difference between enforcement and genocide. And you will establish memorials on every Concordat world to the victims of New Haven, so that future generations remember what happens when power is used without mercy. Ambassador Telmore spoke carefully. Admiral, these terms are acceptable to most of the council, but the Vorn may not agree to surrender their warriors for trial. The Vorn delegate, a grizzled warrior named Tokmar, stood. The Vorn do not surrender our own. If you want War Master Zekthar, you will have to take him by force. Tanaka looked at Tokmar with tired eyes. If that is your choice, I will take him by force. But before you commit to that path, ask yourself this question. How many more Vorn are you willing to sacrifice for Zekthar's pride? How many warriors will die defending war criminals? Is that the honor your species values? Tokmar started to respond, then stopped. The question hung in the air unanswered. Tanaka continued. I will give you 3 days to decide. Surrender the war criminals voluntarily, or I will send Marines to extract them. Either way, justice will be served. The only question is how many more lives you want to waste. He turned and walked out of the council chamber, leaving 47 species to contemplate their options. The human fleet waited, the Concordat argued. And on the surface of Concordat Prime, in the Vorn military district, War Master Zekthar gathered his most loyal warriors and prepared for a final stand. He had lost the battle in space. He had lost the war. But he would not surrender without showing these humans what Vorn warriors could do when cornered. He fortified the Vorn War Memorial, a massive structure dedicated to centuries of Vorn military victories. 10,000 warriors joined him, pledging to fight to the death. When Admiral Tanaka heard about this development, he sighed. He had hoped to avoid this, hoped that reason would prevail. But some beings would rather die than admit they were wrong. Prepare a Marine deployment, he ordered. Surgical extraction. Minimum casualties on both sides. Show them that we can take what we want without becoming monsters. The operation was planned with obsessive precision. Human Marines, using powered armor and non-lethal weapons where possible, would assault the war memorial. The goal was to capture Zekthar and the other war criminals, while minimizing deaths on both sides. It would be humanity's final demonstration, not just of their weapons but of their values. The galaxy was watching, and what happened next would define how the galaxy saw humanity for generations to come. The assault on the Vorn War Memorial began at dawn. 3,000 human Marines descended from orbit in drop pods that screamed through the atmosphere like falling stars. They landed in a perfect perimeter around the ancient structure, a building that had stood for 500 years as a monument to Vorn military supremacy. War Master Zekthar watched from the memorial's highest tower as the humans deployed. He had expected a bombardment from space, expected them to simply destroy the building and everyone in it. Instead, they landed troops. They were coming to take him face to face. "Let them come," he growled to his warriors. "Let them see what it means to fight the Vorn in close combat. We may die, but we will take thousands of them with us." The human Marines advanced in coordinated groups, using powered armor that made them stronger and faster than any Vorn warrior. They carried weapons designed for this specific mission: electromagnetic pulse rifles that could disable electronics, sonic stunners that incapacitated without killing, and as a last resort, conventional firearms loaded with ammunition designed to wound rather than kill. The Vorn warriors opened fire first. Plasma rifles and kinetic weapons hammered at the advancing Marines. The human armor absorbed most of the damage, but 3 Marines went down in the first volley. Their armor breached, their bodies wounded but not dead. The human response was measured. Stun grenades flew through the air, disorienting the Vorn defenders. Electromagnetic pulses disabled their weapons. When the Vorn charged in close combat, as their warrior culture demanded, the Marines met them. With training and technology designed for exactly this scenario, a Vorn warrior 3 meters tall and armed with a plasma blade charged at Marine Sergeant Marcus Webb. Yes, that Marcus Webb, the administrator who had survived New Haven and chosen to serve. He had trained for 6 months specifically for this mission. He dodged the plasma blade, used his armor's enhanced strength to grapple the warrior, and deployed a contact stunner that sent the Vorn into unconsciousness. The battle raged through the memorial for 3 hours. Room by room, floor by floor, the Marines advanced. They used non-lethal methods wherever possible, switching to lethal force only when their own lives were directly threatened. The casualty count climbed slowly. 47 Vorn warriors dead, most of them killed when they forced the Marines into no-win situations. 230 Vorn wounded. 817 captured alive. On the human side, 12 Marines dead, 63 wounded. The disparity was stark. The humans were not trying to slaughter their enemies. They were trying to capture war criminals while preserving as many lives as possible, including enemy lives. War Master Zekthar made his stand in the memorial's central chamber, beneath a massive statue depicting a Vorn warrior standing triumphant over defeated enemies. It was meant to inspire pride in Vorn's strength. Now it seemed almost mocking. The chamber doors blasted open. Admiral Kenji Tanaka walked through, wearing no armor, carrying only his ceremonial sidearm. Behind him, a squad of Marines held position, but did not enter. Zekthar stared at the human admiral in disbelief. "You come to face me unarmed? You insult me with your weakness." Tanaka walked calmly toward the Vorn War Master. "I come to show you that I am not afraid of you, that I do not need weapons or armor to stand before you. You killed 2 million civilians and called it strength. I crossed the galaxy with 500,000 warships and have barely harmed anyone. Tell me again who is weak." Zekthar roared and charged, his forearms reaching for the admiral, his warrior instincts demanding he crush this arrogant human. Tanaka did not draw his weapon. He stood perfectly still and watched the Vorn War Master approach. The Marines raised their weapons, but Tanaka held up a hand, signaling them to hold fire. Zekthar's clawed hands closed around Tanaka's throat, lifting the old man off the ground. It would be easy to kill him. So easy. But Tanaka did not struggle. He looked into Zekthar's eyes with calm sadness. "Go ahead," he said quietly, his voice strained but steady. "Kill me. Prove to your warriors that violence is all you understand. Show them that you learned nothing." Zekthar's grip tightened. This human should be afraid, should be begging for mercy. Instead, he was offering himself as a sacrifice to prove a point. Around the chamber, the remaining Vorn warriors watched in stunned silence. One of them, a young warrior named Vector, spoke with confusion in his voice. "War Master, he does not fight. He does not defend himself. This is not battle. This is execution." Another warrior, an old veteran named Krell, lowered his weapon. "The Admiral speaks truth, War Master. We killed civilians who could not defend themselves and called it enforcement. He could have killed us all from orbit but chose to send soldiers instead. Which of us has shown true strength?" Zekthar looked around at his warriors. These proud Vorn, bred for combat, trained from birth to value honor and strength. And they were questioning him, questioning the values they had always held. He released Tanaka, letting the Admiral drop to the ground. Tanaka caught himself, straightened his uniform, and met Zekthar's gaze without fear. "You should have destroyed us," Zekthar said, his voice heavy with confusion and defeat. "We would have. If humanity had attacked a Vorn world, we would have burned every human planet in revenge. Why did you not?" Tanaka rubbed his throat where bruises were already forming. "Because revenge is easy. Justice is hard. Because killing you accomplishes nothing except creating more hate. And because I want the galaxy to see that humans can have overwhelming power and still choose mercy." He gestured to the Marines at the door. "These warriors could kill everyone in this room in seconds, but they are holding fire, waiting, hoping you will surrender peacefully. That is strength, War Master. The strength to control your power, the strength to choose when not to use it." Zekthar looked at his warriors, at the human Marines, at the Admiral standing before him bruised but unbroken. His entire worldview was collapsing. Everything he had believed about strength, about honor, about the right way to wield power was being challenged by this old human who refused to kill him. Slowly, with movements that felt like lifting mountains, Zekthar removed his weapons and placed them on the ground. "I surrender," he said, the words tasting of ash and shame. "I surrender myself to your justice." The remaining Vorn warriors followed his example. Weapons clattered to the floor. Proud warriors knelt in submission. The battle was over. The trial of War Master Zekthar and 147 other Concordat officers began 3 months later. It was held not on Earth but on a neutral world, presided over by judges from species unaffiliated with either humanity or the Concordat. The proceedings were broadcast across the galaxy. The evidence was overwhelming. The recordings from New Haven showed the orders, the refusal to allow evacuation, the deliberate targeting of civilian population centers. Zekthar did not deny any of it. He sat in the defendant's chair and admitted everything. "I gave the orders," he said when asked. "I believed humans were primitives who needed to learn their place in the galaxy. I believed that showing strength would prevent future conflicts. I was wrong. I am guilty." The judges deliberated for 1 week. The verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all counts of genocide, war crimes, and crimes against sapient beings. The sentence, life imprisonment, with the condemned required to spend their sentences rebuilding what they had destroyed. Zekthar and the other convicted officers were transported to New Haven. The world was still dead, still poisoned by radiation, still bearing the scars of the bombardment. They would spend the rest of their lives working to restore it, using Concordat technology to clean the soil, replant the forests, rebuild the cities. They would never see the world alive again, but perhaps future generations would. The Concordat military was disbanded and reformed under strict limitations. No offensive weapons, no fleet larger than necessary for system defense. Human observers stationed at every major military installation to ensure compliance. The occupation lasted 5 years. Human forces remained in Concordat space not as conquerors but as peacekeepers. They repaired the damage from the battle. They established trade agreements. They shared medical technology and helped rebuild damaged infrastructure. It confused many species. Conquerors were supposed to exploit the defeated, to take resources, to impose harsh terms. Instead, humanity was helping, building schools, training engineers, offering aid to worlds that had been part of the alliance that attacked them. Ambassador Telmore of the Kryn met with Admiral Tanaka during the 3rd year of occupation. The aquatic diplomat had become humanity's strongest advocate in the former Concordat, working to heal the divisions and rebuild trust. "I do not understand your species, Admiral," Telmore said, his translation device rendering his thoughts into human language. "You had the power to dominate us completely. To take whatever you wanted. Why did you not? Tanaka smiled. Because, Ambassador, we learned something from our own history. On Earth, we fought wars for thousands of years. We conquered and were conquered. We built empires and watched them fall. And we learned that peace built on fear does not last. It takes just one generation to forget the fear, and then the cycle starts again. He looked out the window at Concordat Prime, where human and Concordat workers were rebuilding a damaged space station together. But peace built on mutual respect, on shared values, on the understanding that we are stronger together than apart, that peace can last. That is what we are building here. The Terran Defense Fleet did not disband after the occupation ended. The 500,000 dreadnoughts remained operational, stationed across human space and along the former Concordat borders. They patrolled trade routes, responded to emergencies, and served as a constant reminder. Humanity could do this again. Humanity could build another fleet, could cross the galaxy, could defeat any enemy, but humanity chose not to, chose to be protectors instead of conquerors. Other species took notice. The independent worlds that had stayed neutral during the conflict began approaching humanity for alliances. Not out of fear, though that was part of it, but out of genuine respect. Humanity had shown the galaxy something new, a species with the power to dominate but the wisdom not to. Trade routes expanded. Cultural exchanges began. Human universities accepted alien students. Human engineers helped build infrastructure on alien worlds. Slowly, carefully, a new kind of galactic community began to form. The Concordat itself changed. The name remained, but the purpose shifted. Instead of a military alliance enforcing order through threat of violence, it became a voluntary association of species working together for mutual benefit. The Vorn, once the military backbone of the old Concordat, became its peacekeepers, using their warrior culture to protect rather than conquer. 10 years after the Battle of Concordat Prime, the memorial on New Haven was completed. The world had been terraformed over decades of work by the prisoners and volunteers from across the galaxy. It was alive again, green and beautiful, a testament to what could be rebuilt from ashes. The memorial was a simple design. A wall of black stone 3 kilometers long inscribed with 2.3 million names. Every person who died when the colony burned. Men, women, children, farmers, teachers, engineers. Each name carefully researched, each life honored. People came from across the galaxy to see it. Human survivors who had lost family, alien species who had heard the story, even some Vorn warriors, seeking to understand the cost of the path their species had once followed. At the base of the wall, a simple inscription in 47 languages, representing every species of the old Concordat. They were innocent. They were defenseless. They were ours. Never again, for anyone. Admiral Kenji Tanaka, now retired and old, visited the memorial on the 10th anniversary of New Haven's burning. Sarah Chen and her daughter Emily, now 17, stood beside him. Emily had been too young to remember much of New Haven, but she had grown up with the stories, with the weight of being a survivor. "Do you think it was worth it?" Emily asked the Admiral quietly. "Everything that happened. The war, the occupation, all of it." Tanaka looked at the names on the wall, at the people who never got the chance to grow old, to see their children graduate, to live the peaceful lives they had worked for. "I do not know if anything could be worth this," he admitted. "But I know that if we had done nothing, if we had let your mother and the other survivors be the only memorial to New Haven, then these deaths would have meant nothing. At least now the galaxy has changed. At least now other species think twice before harming civilians. At least now there is hope for something better." A Vorn approached them, moving with the careful respect of someone entering a sacred place. It was Vector, one of the warriors who had surrendered at the war memorial. He had spent 10 years working to restore New Haven, and now he came as a free citizen, his sentence completed. "Admiral Tanaka." "Commander Chen, young Emily," he said, his translator rendering his guttural speech. "I have no right to speak to you, no right to stand in this place, but I wanted you to know that what happened here changed my species. We were taught that strength meant the ability to dominate others. Now we teach our children that strength means the courage to show mercy. Because of New Haven. Because of you." Sarah Chen looked at this alien warrior, one of the species that had destroyed her world. She should hate him, should want him to suffer. But looking at his genuine remorse, at the years he had spent trying to make amends, she found something else. "The people who ordered this," she said carefully. "They were wrong, but you helped rebuild. You tried to make it right. That takes a different kind of courage." Vector bowed deeply, a gesture of respect in Vorn culture. "I can never make it right, but I can spend the rest of my life trying. That is what New Haven taught me." He walked away, leaving the humans to their remembrance. Around the memorial, hundreds of beings from dozens of species moved quietly, reading names, leaving offerings, reflecting on what had been lost and what had been learned. A young alien child from a species called the Varesh asked her father why there were so many human ships in the sky. The father, who had lived through the war and its aftermath, looked up at the Terran defense fleet maintaining its eternal watch. "Because they want us to remember," he said softly. "Not to fear them, but to remember that peace is a choice, and they will make sure we all keep choosing it." Admiral Tanaka stood before the memorial as the sun set over New Haven. The world was beautiful again, alive again, full of hope again, but it would never be the same. The names on the wall would never fade. The memory would never die, and that was exactly the point. Humanity had shown the galaxy what happened when you mistook their kindness for weakness. They had built the largest fleet in galactic history. They had crossed 15,000 light-years to deliver justice. They had defeated their enemies and then helped them rebuild. They had proven that being powerful did not mean being cruel. That having the ability to destroy did not mean you should. That the strongest species was not the one who could inflict the most pain, but the one who could control their power and choose mercy, even when revenge was easier. The galaxy would remember New Haven, would remember the 2.3 million dead, would remember the 500,000 dreadnoughts that came seeking justice, would remember that humanity offered peace with one hand and held a sword in the other. And every species, human and alien alike, would understand the message: we choose peace. But do not mistake that choice for inability. Do not test us. Do not make us prove again what we are capable of. Because if you burn our worlds, if you harm our innocent, if you force us to cross the galaxy again, we will come, not in anger, not in hate, but in the cold determination of a species that has learned that sometimes peace must be defended with overwhelming force. We will come, we will win, and we will show you mercy even when you showed us none. That is who humanity is. That is what the galaxy learned. And that is why, in the years that followed, peace spread across the stars. Not because everyone loved each other, not because all conflicts disappeared, but because everyone understood that some lines once crossed would bring consequences beyond imagination. And nobody wanted to be the next species that learned that lesson. Admiral Tanaka placed a hand on the memorial wall, feeling the names carved into stone. "Rest well," he whispered to the dead. "Your deaths meant something. The galaxy is better because we refuse to let you be forgotten." He turned and walked away, an old man who had carried the weight of 500,000 ships and chosen to use that power wisely. Behind him, the memorial stood eternal, a reminder of what was lost and what was saved. And above, silent and watchful, the Terran defense fleet maintained its guard. Not threatening, not aggressive, just there, always there, reminding the galaxy, we are humanity. We choose peace, but we are not weak. Never again would anyone make the mistake of thinking otherwise.